Now, Great Britain has won the none too flattering title of king of the world's tax havens. And new reports says the UK's overseas territories make up much of the world's secret offshore banking industry. And aside from making promises, London hasn't done much about it. Polly Boyko breaks down the report for us.
The UK government has been bashing tax avoidance for months. In fact, Prime Minister David Cameron made increasing tax transparency a key issue at the G8 summit that he hosted earlier this year. But despite all the efforts, according to a group called the Tax Justice Network, Britain is the world's worst offender for financial secrecy. 12 of its island dependencies, where the Queen is the head of state, by the way, rank among the top 50 most secretive tax jurisdictions in the world. The laws relating to these island dependencies, such as the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Jersey and Guernsey, they have to be approved in London. So campaigners say that the onus is on Westminster to clean up their act. Well, to talk about the issue, I'm joined by Salman Shaheen, who's the editor of the International Tax Review magazine. Salman, thank you for joining us. Well, the people that deposit their money in these tax havens do it through entirely legal schemes. So what's the fuss about anyway?
Well, I think it's a misconception to describe tax avoidance as legal. It's just not illegal. And the reason for that is governments have been unable to anticipate the schemes employed by multinational corporations and their highly paid armies of accountants and lawyers that they've sent across the world to root out the best tax deals for their clients.
But Britain has made a lot of steps to improve transparency, especially over recent months. They've certainly spoken a lot about it. Are you surprised by these negative rankings?
I'm not surprised by it, no. I mean, it's the Crown dependencies and overseas territories have long been considered among the worst offenders of world tax havenry. What is surprising is that the British government's not doing very much about it. It really needs to get its network of tax havens offshore in order.
Salman Shaheen, thank you very much for joining us. Well, reports that large corporations and super rich individuals have been dodging billions of pounds in taxes through entirely legal loopholes have caused public outrage here. So the news that Britain has been labelled the world ruler of tax havens is unlikely to be met by cheers of approval here. Polly Boyko, RT, London.
Well, to discuss the report and its likely impact, we're now joined by the director of the Tax Justice Network, John Christensen. Mr. Christensen, thank you so much for joining us here on RT. Well, your report has come down hard on Britain, but how much control does the British government really have over what's happening in its overseas territories?
Well, thank you. Yes, Britain is by far the largest of the major tax haven economies, largest in the world, and it controls some of the most secretive tax havens in the world as well. Places like Bermuda, which are particularly secretive, the Channel Islands, Turks and Caicos, all of them come under British control. Now, constitutionally, all of these territories, Cayman, Bermuda, Channel Islands, Turks and Caicos, have the Queen as their head of state. And the Queen's government, in other words, Prime Minister Cameron, is responsible in international law for their good governance and has every possibility and every power to intervene in their affairs to make sure they are well managed.
Well, we see on the other hand, I mean, isn't it, what's wrong with tax havens? Isn't a certain amount of financial secrecy vital for citizens to keep their money safe?
No, not at all. And first of all, the idea that financial secrecy in tax havens keeps people's money safe when those people are located in Africa or in Europe or in Russia is quite wrong. But the important thing about secrecy is that it doesn't just encourage tax evasion, which is illegal. Let's be clear about that. It also encourages fraud, embezzlement, and a very wide range of other corrupt practices. And this is the reason why the world now needs to tackle secrecy, because the tax haven economy has become so large. I mean, to give you some idea of how large, the wealth held by private individuals.
But won't money always find the path of least resistance? You close one tax haven, but there's somewhere else another one springs up. For example, look, Switzerland, which was regarded the bastion of banking secrecy, has now signed the international convention that might lift its banking secrecy. But what is your view on this? Will the new zone spring up?
Well, first of all, let's be clear, most of these tax havens operate with some of the world's largest international banks, some of the world's largest international accounting firms, and some of the world's largest law firms. So we know it isn't the tax havens, it's the banks that are leading this, and there's lots that can be done to tackle the banks, as the United States government has shown in its own efforts to tackle Swiss banks. And they've been very successful there. But as far as Switzerland is concerned, whilst there are very, very fine words coming out from the Swiss government, when you look at the detail of what they're actually doing and have done in the last 3 years, very little has changed. Switzerland remains one of the most secretive and one of the least cooperative jurisdictions in the world.
Well, there's currently around £330 billion in British banks that's been repatriated from UK overseas tax havens. So a lot of money does end up back in the economy. What is your view on, these flows of finances? I mean, it wouldn't be economic suicide to let this money go elsewhere.
Not at all. I mean, if you take the example of London, which attracts huge sums, hundreds of billions of pounds or dollars every year from across the world, does this money actually contribute in a positive way to the British economy? Very, very difficult to say yes, but there's plenty of evidence that that money is simply inflating property prices in London and directly harming the British economy. Would that money be better used elsewhere? If, for example, the money was retained in, let's say, Russia or Africa and invested in productive activity there, the answer is almost certainly yes, it would be better if that money stayed in the country of origin and was invested in the country of origin.
John Christensen, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but thank you so much for your insight. That was John Christensen, director of the Tax Justice Network.